Good evening and welcome to television's most up-to-the-minute topical show. And if you're watching Mr. Nixon, we wish you a speedy recovery. In the news this week, latest pictures confirm that Malaysia is importing state-of-the-art British weaponry. In Gloucester, detectives hunting in Cromwell Street say things really are getting out of hand. And Prince Charles consoles Elton John after his latest hair transplant. On Ian Hislop's team this week, an Australian writer and journalist who recently wrote a celebrated article accusing the British of being rude and patronising to foreigners, typical convict mentality, Kathy Lette.
G'day.
And with Paul Merton is an actress who, despite her associations with certain panellists, is very much a star in her own right, Mrs. Paul Merton. No, I'm sorry, Caroline Quentin. So we get straight on with round one. 2 filmic excerpts per team. Ian and Kathy, something you may have missed.
Oh, it's a huge queue to be interviewed by Jeremy Paxman. Wonder who he's voting for. Mandela, probably.
Voters who found their name on the electoral roll.
Brilliant.
Because those are the way what's his Botha, is it? What's his name? The white guy. He's putting the election.
The clerk.
Well, like, he's not doing it, so like, oh, it's not going in. The election's off. I'm sorry, I can't put the vote in.
Yeah.
The election's off.
It's nice to see a country where they want to have an election.
It is the first free elections in South Africa, where 26 British MPs and 150 BBC staff, at a cost of several £million, have jetted out to the sun to observe the polling. Curious how the first free elections in Latvia last winter failed to generate similar interest. After years of brutal white dictatorship, South Africans now just want their country to settle down and become a normal African nation. So a brutal black dictatorship then. Paul and Caroline, bend over.
It's a car.
It's a car, lovely car.
Well spotted.
Bad paint job.
Yeah.
Oh,
hello.
stick.
Very nice.
The headmaster of Eton.
God, this looks like fun.
What do you think, rabbit eyes?
I don't know, donkey dick. I think it's, I think it's...
Can I say you're looking particularly nice tonight?
Thank you very much. That's very nice.
Isn't it this American boy that, who's about to be whipped in the Singapore region?
Yeah, it is the forthcoming flogging in Singapore of Black Briton Emmanuel Yankson and Chinese Briton Xu Chi-ho, which has been virtually ignored by the British press, but what's really outraged them is the caning of white American Michael Fay. So apartheid may be dead in South Africa, but it's alive and well in Fleet Street. Meanwhile, in Qatar, another Briton, Gavin Sharon Smith, is due to be flogged. Tory MP Terry Dick said it was absolutely right that he should be thrashed for his immoral behaviour in selling alcohol to Arabs. He should have followed the government's example and sold guns to them instead. Ian and Kathy, familiar territory for you.
It's a jet. Do that one. Oh, it's flying somewhere. Obviously not a UN one.
Oh, this is a civil war between NATO and the UN about who should fight the Serbs, isn't that right?
That is right.
Yeah.
Actually, it's very serious this time. They've issued the Serbs an ultimatum. If they don't get out of Garage D, there's going to be another ultimatum. Do you notice that Douglas Hurd never pronounces Garage D right? He always says Garadzi. And he won't help them out. You think he might get their name right? Mr. Turd.
Yes, it is Bosnia, and NATO requested UN permission to launch airstrikes, but as usual we're unable to get a decision out of General Secretary Dr. Boutros Ghali, because this time he was flying to Barbados. The spokesman apologised and explained that Dr. Boutros Ghali was out of touch. That would appear to be putting it mildly. Paul and Caroline, bitch of a question for you.
Oh, look, poo jumping.
Yeah.
Don't see that every day.
And how long have you been a dog, by the way? Just put the dog in the glove compartment, would you? Well, this is Pooh the dog that's gone missing. Went down a hole and they can't find it.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Poor old Prince Charles. Second bitch he's lost.
Can you just explain this English thing to me that you guys do, that you keep your, you know, she's kept his dog at home, this Pooh at home, and sends his kids off to these high-class kennels. What's the heck?
Public
Eton or
schools.
Harrow or
So in
something?
Australians, you keep the kids at home and send the dogs off to public school then?
You went to public school. You've probably got a corrugated bottom, have you?
Have you, Anne? handy having a corrugated bottom, wouldn't it? If you were eating biscuits in bed, it'd be somewhere to keep them. You know, like custard creams along there.
Bourbon.
Beg your pardon?
You heard.
Actually, very good for when you
fun.
get caught after lights out eating the biscuits. You'd get beaten on your corrugated bottom.
Yes.
So it wouldn't hurt.
What do you know, of course, because you've been to a public school, haven't you?
I did.
Didn't teach you much, though, did they?
I don't know.
I didn't get metalwork O-level, no.
Any time I want a corrugated bottom, I can make my own one.
Although Ian did know the President of South Africa. It's the sad loss, well, it was the sad loss about an hour ago when we started talking about it, of Prince Charles' Jack Russell Terrier, Pooh. Volunteers at Balmoral have already searched hundreds of square miles with no luck, and they'll be starting on the East Wing tomorrow. Pooh's identical twin, as it happens, is owned by Camilla Parker Bowles, and Charles has telephoned her regularly since Pooh's disappearance, though of course this is not the first time they've discussed the doggy position on the phone. Pooh's last engagement was sitting with her master through an interview with Labour MP Roy Hattersley. I got no idea where the dog could have gone, burped Mr. Hattersley. Local dignitary John Stammers said, I spoke to several people in the village today and they were all very upset. Well, stop speaking to them then. Which barking behaviour brings us sniffing up the end of round one, and by an extraordinary coincidence, both teams have scored as many points as they have nostrils. Both Ian and Cathy and Paul and Caroline enjoying a cavernous 4. Well, round two is knocking at the door, so let's quickly hide behind the piece of furniture that is our caption competition. Ian and Cathy, here's yours. Paul and Caroline, yours is here. Time then for a furtive peek over someone else's shoulder as we take a look at this week's tabloid headlines. One headline per head. Paul, your entertaining pun, cheap victory.
It's this people, isn't it? Because we had Mr. Sad last week, and it's Mr. and Mrs. Fussy this week, who were have a lot of problems with noises from their next door neighbours. There was one neighbour had a sort of fountain, and they complained about the noise of that, and somebody else had a dog, and the lead scraping against the kennel was making a bit of a noise. And
You made that bit up.
No, no.
Really?
Yeah, it's true.
Oh.
Yeah.
You get the same papers in your house?
I can't read. Oh, decoration, that's what I like.
And
Woman's own gardener's world.
This is fascinating,
and they could
You're a
think-
fine one.
Don't think that it isn't. But,
Droning on.
And at one point,
sorry, little lover's tiff going on. Sorry, Paul, what were you saying?
and he complained about this guy next door who's got these budgies, and the budgies were making a lot of noise, and they took him to court. What I would have done, I'd have wound the neighbours up even more. I'd have fixed tiny little megaphones to the front of the budgies' beaks, like that. So in the morning, you just hear this sort of, cheep! That's what I would have done. So they took him to court and they lost.
They did. It's the case brought against the budgie fancier, Mr. Fred Kennedy was his name.
You can get locked up for that, you know?
I think he just liked them, that's all, from a distance in a platonic way. Of West Yorkshire, it was a case brought by his next-door neighbours who, in an effort to prove that the budgies were chirping too raucously, hired top noise expert Professor Joe McNulty, a genius in all aspects of his field, apart from the fact that he was deaf. When Gerald Lumley, counsel for Mr. Kennedy, said, I put it to you that you are hard of hearing, Professor McNulty replied, yes, I am, thereby depriving everyone of the joke they were expecting. The name of the moaning neighbours was Mr. and Mrs. Fussy. Mr. Kennedy said, there have been problems throughout the time we have lived next door to the Fussys. Still not half as many problems as with the neighbours on the other side, Mr. and Mrs. Shagging on the lawn. Caroline, a story from Down Under for you. Snipnosis.
This is the bloke who's had his vasectomy done, not with an anaesthetic, but under hypnosis. And I thought it would be rather nice if Paul McKenna had done it. And made a bit of a comedy turn out of it all, really. And
But all this crap, and it's so easy to hypnotise a pen. You've just got one eye, just look at it, And as wives, I mean, well, I don't know about the donkey dick over there, but with most of us, you know, it's so easy to hypnotise a penis. You go to bed, all you do is say, "Are you awake, darling?" And it goes to sleep like that. Isn't that your experience?
No.
No.
It is, and
I
they're
have
lying
had that
anyway.
experience, but
I
not
don't-
with Paul.
It wasn't actually the penis that was being hypnotised, but I think
All
it was
those
him.
bits.
Oh, right. Yes. Well, his brain, I think, probably.
Same difference.
After the operation, he told waiting reporters, "I felt great. It was a complete..." Kathy, a hellish question for you. Devil gets acquitted.
This is the to do with the satanic abuse. It's been discovered that it's only exists in the minds of social workers.
The priest who was caught, the social workers said he had satanic books in his library, which turned out to be a copy of Dennis Weekly. They said he had a cross, which was a balsa wood aeroplane, and a hooded cloak, which was his graduation gown.
Witnesses in the Orkney case still insist that they saw young adults taking part in sexual intercourse with animals and eating each other. That'll just be the Club 1830 resort up the road. It took the government inquiry 3 years and £20 million of taxpayers' money to prove that satanic abuse does not exist. A 5-year inquiry into the Tooth Fairy starts next Thursday. And finally, in this round, Ian, Coward's Rap for BBC Chiefs.
The BBC was meant to be putting out a panorama programme on Thursday, I think it was, about Westminster Council and corruption there. And they found that they just can't put it out. There have been a lot of complaints by Tory MPs, because it's coming up to the local elections, and so the BBC have decided there are legal reasons why they can't put it out. The problem about Westminster Council is, you know, there is this huge district auditor's report which suggests that they were up to no good, and they were a bunch of crooks, really, and they were what they call gerrymandering votes. And the district auditor said, "It's all right, I'm not going to prosecute, you can put this film out." And the BBC have said, "No, I don't think we can, really, no, we won't, really, at all."
It is the absurd and nonsensical allegations that the BBC suppressed a panorama programme about corruption in Conservative-held Westminster Council. Jack Straw, Shadow Environment Secretary, said this decision smacks of great cowardice by the BBC. What rubbish, and just to prove that the BBC aren't cowards, they're perfectly happy for us to say that Michael Portillo is in fact... Sandwich. All of which executive porkies bring us unconvincingly to the end of round 2, and the official scoreline, if it's to be believed, shows that the two teams are neck and literally neck, Ian and Kathy and Paul and Caroline both being just the wrong side of 9. Round 3 follows in a second. So now round 3, our justifiably maligned odd one out round, 4 runaway success stories, which runs the Radio 5 Live. Paul, to make up for last week's easy one, Mrs. Jacqueline Greaves of Loughton, Cheshire, Mr. Chubatara Islam of St Michael's Square, Gloucester, the Mirror Group pensioners, and Nancy Kerrigan.
Where did you say he was? Gloucester? It must be anything to do with this terrible
He's a DIY enthusiast.
I don't know who Jackie Greaves is. It's not Jimmy Greaves or a sex change, is it?
I know who Jackie Greaves is.
Is it something to do with...
I said I know who Jackie Greaves is.
Good for you. Is it something to do with compensation of some kind?
Not quite.
The odd one out is the Mirror pensioners.
For what reason?
Don't know.
Jackie Greaves was the woman who was found in a hole of ice. She'd built herself in and then she was rescued.
Oh.
This man looked over the fence. He's a neighbour of Fred West's. Not a very good friend, I gather, but
Right.
looked over the fence. That's
Just as well, actually.
Nancy Kerrigan.
Yes, I told you that.
I think the link
They all
is...
sold stories to the paper apart from the Mirror pensioners.
That is the correct answer.
I think I might give one to each of you, as it were. It's that all have profited from misfortune, except for the Mirror Group pensioners, from whose misfortune others have profited. mentioning no Maxwell's names. The BBC are in fact cracking down on references to Ian and Kevin Maxwell, just in case programme makers appear biased in their treatment of these two heartless, scheming bastards. Mr. Chabatara Islam charged photographers and TV crews for access to his garden, which backs onto number 25 Cromwell Street. One tabloid newspaper described this as ghoulish profiteering. That was in their 16-page full-colour House of Horror supplement. Jacqueline Greaves is the woman rescued from a Scottish mountain who sold her story to the tabloids for £20,000. And angry Sir Hector Munro, the Scottish sports minister, said she should give all the money to whoever found her. So that's 20,000 quid's worth of winner-lot for Solo the Border Collie. Caroline, 4 international beauties for you. Princess Diana. Jane Seymour. The lovely Professor John Catford. And Lizzie Power.
I don't know who he is, this Professor Catford. But it's...
Well, he's the odd one out then, because you don't know who he is.
This is divorce, splitting up. Lizzie Powers is just having trouble with Michael Aspel. No, it's not that. It's not that at all. I'm lying. It's not. She is the,
Which one?
her, Diana, is, don't start. Actually, because I'm trying.
Shut your face.
You can keep it
I
up.
can't keep it up. Well, shut
Yeah, I
up.
know that.
I knew it was a mistake.
So she is...
Where were you to 6:30
Oh,
this
just,
morning?
I'm trying to answer a question.
then answer
The
the
nice
question
man
then.
is asking me. She's the president of Relate, isn't she? Of the marriage guidance thing.
Didn't relate now, he's going to.
You might learn something. She...
Thank you.
Look,
I've been sponsored by She magazine.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, well, go on, get on with it then.
I will. This Catford must be like something to do with Relate, like a counsellor or a top boss or something like this. That's my answer.
And who was the odd one out? Sorry, I missed it in the middle of the
Jane
melee.
Seymour. Jane Seymour because she's nothing to do with Relate.
And she's not an actress.
Absolutely right. Well done. The answer is that all of them except Jane Seymour work for the Marriage Guidance Council, Relate, even though their own marriages have all famously gone awry. Princess Diana is the patron of Relate. A spokeswoman said, Diana's own marital difficulties give her a better understanding of the problems facing separating couples, such as who keeps which butler and who gets custody of Cornwall. Kathy, 4 bits of skirt for you. Imelda Marcos. Marla Maples, the Pope, and the old woman who lived in a shoe.
Pope's trying to get into the Barbara Streisand concert.
I mean, it looks like it should be a shoe question, but that's too obvious, isn't it?
Oh, what question, sorry?
Shoe. It's got to. It looks like it's got to be a shoe because of Imelda Marcos' foot fetish, but no, I think it's got to be Catholic. So now Imelda Marcos is a Catholic, isn't she? So that she believes in ovarian roulette, and the Pope, of course, believes.
Rumour is he's a Catholic.
Rumour is he's a Catholic, and the old woman in the shoe. She had millions of. Well, was it the old woman in the shoe had so many children? You know what to
She
do.
didn't know what to do.
So
Obviously,
Marla's
the
got
children.
Marla's got to be the odd one out because she's a model turned actress, MTA, which means that she probably had margarine legs, easily spread. And she had a lot of sex and didn't get pregnant until she was married. So I would say she's the odd one out. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense,
Is it
but
the right
it's
answer?
completely wrong.
Oh.
But you were terribly close with virtually the first word you said. which I
Shoes.
think
It's
was
a shoe question.
Yeah,
Oh.
They've all got big shoe collections, except the old woman who lived in a shoe, who's only got one.
is entirely right. It's that all of them have a large collection of shoes, whereas the old woman lived in one. That's until she promised to vote Conservative when Westminster City Council upgraded her to a fur-lined boot. Imelda Marcos, along with her now notorious 3,000 pairs of shoes, left behind 500 black bras, 200 Marks & Spencer's black girdles, and 1,000 unopened packets of tights, what some Tory backbenchers would give. And finally, Ian, name the odd one out here. Eurotunnel director Christopher Garnett, Gillian Tailforth solicitor William Garnett, Alf Garnett, and Virginia Bottomley.
I think, again, I do know this. The answer is Alf Garnett, because Virginia Bottomley's maiden name was Garnett, and she is actually related to these people. He's Gillian Tailforth's solicitor. I don't suppose he's anybody's solicitor nowadays. That man runs Eurotunnel, in the sense that he opens it every couple of years.
Yes.
And then says it'll be open in another couple of years. And but they're all relatives of hers, hence their proficiency at their jobs.
You're absolutely right. It's that they're all members of the Garnett family, with the exception of Alf, a fictional character, who began by horrifying the nation with his stupidity, but in the end proved popular, rather like John Major's career in reverse. William Garnett, shot to fame as the solicitor who tried to prevent Gillian Tailforth being known as that actress who gives blowjobs on the A1. Unfortunately, he lost the case, which was extremely bad news for that actress who gives blowjobs on the A1. All of which sibling rivalry marks the end of this third quarter, and the high-tech neon scoreboard in all its complexity reveals that Paul and Caroline are miles behind with 11, while Ian and Kathy are narrowly ahead with 13. Our final missing words round has been patiently waiting for its big break for the last 20 minutes, so why not give it a go? Well, there are a number of reasons, but we're going to anyway. This week's guest publication, from which an undisclosed number of headlines are taken, is the controversially hard-hitting Hairdressers' Journal International. No hopers lead off, so Paul and Caroline, that means you. What packs out Wembley?
Barbara Streisand.
Is not the right answer, and it's not your question anyway.
Babs, Streisand.
Barbara's nose?
No, it's not Barbara or Babs
Paul
Streisand. It's not Paul Merton, no, that was the London Palladium.
Oh, right.
And he only half filled it anyway.
Don't know. Couldn't care less.
Oh dear, he's not playing anymore. It's hair industry is the answer.
Hair industry.
Next, back to basics for what?
Back to basics for British hairdressing industry.
Hairdressers' health is actually the answer. I'll give you one for that.
Why?
Well, I mentioned hairdressers.
I panicked.
It's a
Next, everybody's miserable except us. Say who?
Hairdressers.
say sugar-sweet couple sitting opposite.
Yeah.
Brits, English?
No,
Hairdressers.
you were, well, no, they said hairdressers first. I'll have to give them the point, because crimpers is actually the answer, which is slang for hairdressers. Smith goes in search of what?
Personality?
Policy.
Good answer.
Voter.
Voter.
Smith goes in search of Chris. Smith
Granny.
goes in search of Wesson.
We're getting more and more obscure now. 4% swing is the answer that you were not getting anywhere near. Ian and Kathy?
Why are you wearing that suit? You look as though you're auditioning for a Merchant Ivory film. You won't get it.
I could see you from the nipple down. I mean,
Well, you
you
want
have
me
this
to take everything
reputation
off?
of you being the great sex god, but we've never, I mean, we don't know. You might have padded underwear, you might have sandals and socks on under there. I mean, isn't it true, Caroline? How can we tell if he's a sex god? Oh, I see.
Anyway, sorry, where were we?
Have we?
Yes, very good. Stand by. Howard opens what?
End.
Is it pensioner's handbag with crowbar?
Sainsbury's.
Breaking into someone's handbag was the closest new front over crime. BBC diverts £75 million into what?
Tory's central office. You're going to suck up to them, do it properly.
Is it bid for 2 new channels?
I think it's regional programming, isn't it?
It is regional programming, incredibly. Next, judge grabs lager from what?
Mini bar in his wig.
Juror.
Any sort of juror particularly?
Drunk juror.
Drunk juror.
Well, 1 point each probably. And finally, MPs fall under what?
Secretary.
But it's 3 words. It must be number 37 bus, number 78 bus, 64, 29.
This could go on for some time.
31.
Guillotine.
No, put buses from your mind.
Fall under hairdresser's spell.
4:15 from Paddington. 4:45 from Paddington.
Spell, yes, I'll give you one for spell. Spell of star witnesses, in fact. Which idle whimsy brings us meandering to the end of tonight's War of Words. And the sad story is that this week's April Fools are Paul and Caroline with 14, and this week's Mayflowers are Ian and Kathy with 21.
Anyway, it's not the winning that's important, Paul. It's the look on your face when you lose.
You know, after 7 series, I still haven't got used to the experience.
Congratulations to our winners. All the rest of Cliff Richard's singles to our losers. There does remain one final irritation in the shape of our caption competition. Ian and Kathy, what did you do with this?
Look, I've got John Selwyn's Gummer stuck up my trunk.
It's a BT introduced new novelty phone. And here's an elephant using it.
Thank you, Paul and Caroline. What did this do for you?
It's the Pooh Kidnap Identity Parade.
I think the dog at the end that's looking at the others is saying, and this is your idea of a good day out, is it?
And the one in the middle saying, I really like his use of light and shade. This is his dog period.
You're always saying, don't tell anyone, I've just had a piss in a fire bucket.
On which delightful note, we say thank you to our panellists, Ian Hislop and Kathy Lette, Paul Merton and Caroline Quentin. And I leave you with news that the man who ghostwrites all of Geoffrey Archer's novels has finally admitted that he delegates the job. Sport, and after a hard winter in Chelmsford, Graham Gooch admits that perhaps he should have gone on tour to the West Indies after all. And Deng Xiaoping makes a guest appearance in the Chinese version of Baywatch. Good night.